Welcome to episode 169 of The Numbers Game. I'm Jace and I'm here with Nick and Marty. How you going, fellas?
Going well, thanks, Jace. Been out at the Hillsville Farmers Market on the weekend and amazing what you can buy for $70 out there. Got some great veggies, some squash, some pumpkin, and bought some lovely honey. And I thought it's a good thing to do. Not many stands out there because it is Hillsville. A bit of fun, but for the 7 or 8 stands that were there, we got a good bounty. So, yeah, we're feeling very healthy and happy. So how are you, Nick? You going well?
I'm very well, Marty. Yeah, nice and refreshed. Had a reasonably busy weekend, but nothing too crazy. Went to Crown Casino Sunday morning for Yum Cha. Haven't done that for quite some time, and every time I do that, I'm like, geez, why don't we do this more often? It's not much better. But it was buzzing there. It was buzzing at Crown just before midday on Sunday. So yeah, people still got cash. People are still spending out there.
What's Yum Cha cost these days?
Well, I'm glad you asked because actually, I'll give you a bit of a story. We were sitting there, and I was looking around, and Lucky Chan is where we went. For anyone that is familiar with Crown, and they've got a huge restaurant with two levels. And I said to my wife, Alicia, I said, gee, I wonder what the rent is here. Like, it must be ludicrous. Millions of dollars a year. Had no idea. I don't know, Jace, you might have an idea. I don't know, but I was like, where would you even start? The rent here must be huge. So anyway, we got to the end. No drinks really. Yeah, obviously it was Sunday morning, so we just had, I think, a bottle of sparkling water. And for 2 people, it was $176. Now, that's not super expensive for eating out, but it's pretty expensive for Yum Cha. I would guarantee you we could have went to the city and probably paid $110 or $100 or maybe $120. Or, maybe out to Springvale somewhere, could have paid even less. So
$40.
Yeah, well, possibly, yeah. So I think there's a Crown premium on the price, but just got me thinking what those businesses are paying in rent. I look at the businesses down there. You've got Grady. You've got what else is down there, Jace? The Atlantic, Lucky Chan, Nobu's there as well. Rockpool. Yeah, I'd maybe put it on your list to do, Marty. But how much are these places paying in rent? Do you reckon on an annual basis at Crown Casino? Be ludicrous.
Oh, be huge.
Jace, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm distracted. I'm a little bit nervous. I've got the London Marathon this weekend coming up. So April 21st for anyone playing at home. Greg and I will be over in London running the London Marathon. So just trying to keep the body fit and healthy, and yeah, just getting geared up for that. So it was a bit of a quiet weekend, just visiting family and keeping low key. But mate, all's good in the numbers game world and the Jace world. So happy days.
It's good. How is the body?
Good. Yeah, I had a few niggles earlier on in the prep. I think I could be a little bit better prepped, but at the same time, just happy to get out there and see the London Eye, the Big Ben, run across Tower Bridge, and we finish in front of Buckingham Palace. And by the time I'm done, Greg would have finished about an hour before me. So hopefully he's waiting with a nice ice cold frothy, and yeah, we can go and do some sightseeing together with the family. And
are you off the grog, or are you back on?
What, you have to be off it to be back on? Is that how it works?
Yeah, well, you went a little while without having too much to drink. Have you sort of loaded up again as you get closer, or are you still sort of
Yeah, stay very low key in the couple of weeks prior. So when I had the injury, I doubled up the injury by then going out on the weekend and being like, oh, well, fuck it, I'm injured. Might as well enjoy myself. Probably wasn't the right attitude. So we'll learn, we'll adapt, we'll get through this one. And then we've got Gold Coast Marathon and Chicago Marathon later in the year. So I think what I'll do is I'll learn from everything that I did wrong this time around and then try and get better for the next one.
So good, mate.
Marathon runners listening, if you have tips, feel free to jump on Instagram, give the Numbers Game a follow, and send me your marathon tips. I'd love to hear them. But in lieu of that, we've got Nick Riley taking us through an interesting episode today. What have you got, Nick?
Thanks, Chase. Yeah, a little bit of a different topic. And the reason I chose this topic was I feel like we've been building up to something like this. This is not crazy stuff, by the way. The topic is board games for kids. But listening to Marty recently talk about the homeschooling and some of the interaction that Marty had post that interview or that discussion that we had, it seems there are a lot of parents out there that are homeschooling. And I guess the issue around school and learning basic money strategies has been a problem for quite some time. The Barefoot Investor has been pushing this agenda for some time, which I think is great. But I listened to a podcast this morning, Mark Bouris, Straight Talk, which is a good podcast, and he had Robert Kiyosaki on there, who most people will remember him or know him from the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. One of the most read books in the world, I'd suggest, and there's not many people that I know that have not read that book or at least heard of it. And he has a board game called Cashflow 101. Now, I've never heard of this board game. I mentioned it to Marty earlier today, and he's heard of it. And the board game teaches you the basics of financial statements. So, based on I'll actually give a brief summary of it, but it teaches you the basics of financial statements, and it got me thinking about Monopoly, and Monopoly teaches you about building wealth. And then I started to think about chess, and chess teaches you to strategize. And obviously, Marty, I wanted to get your input here at some stage because I know Charlie's gone down a rabbit hole with chess. So I was thinking all these things that are available to parents for kids, and particularly games, that parents should be across. And the Cashflow 101, once I did some research, there's an abundance of games that do similar things. But something that Robert Kiyosaki said, a quote of his really resonated with me, and it was, kids learn lessons by playing games. It's the best way for them to practice character and habits that they'll use later in life. Cashflow for Kids helps develop a strong foundation of financial intelligence and encourages kids to use their money wisely. And then I just got thinking about, kids learning. And obviously, most people know that I'm addicted to golf at the moment. And I thought about watching kids get golf lessons, because you often see kids get golf lessons when you go to the golf driving range. And with the putting, it's all about putting and putting games, and not so much the the putt games. But when you see the golf instructors on the putting green with kids, they might have a group of 6 or 7 kids. It's all driven by a game. It's not, hey, you need to get the ball in the hole. There's some kind of game, and it just got me thinking that, you learn as a kid from playing, no matter if it's sport, you learn hand-eye, if it's sport, all these things that you learn. So I thought we'd maybe unpack these games a little bit more. And again, Marty, lean on your experience with Charlie, because I'm pretty sure he's into Monopoly too, or that's been a big part of his learnings, and the impact that this can have, or how these can actually be a really good tool for parents when they're trying to teach basic money skills versus, maybe a boring general ledger that Jason and I learned in our accounting degrees. So thoughts, Marty?
Well, I think it's pivotal. I think I wanted to buy that Cashflow 101 game a couple of years ago for Charlie to take him to the next level from Monopoly. I think couldn't find it in Australia. I think it was almost, at the time, it was something like $250 or something just to get it over to Australia. So I didn't end up doing it. But I like the fundamentals of actually, having the relevancy of understanding a balance sheet and having income producing assets, I think is really good. But even Monopoly with Charlie, it's interesting when you're playing games. It's not just about learning about the financial disciplines around the game, but it's who you're playing with in the enjoyment of that game, right? And that's in anything in life, whether it's cricket or any type of learning. It's always better together, and when you're getting perspectives from other people in the game. But even off the back of playing Monopoly, I remember Charlie asked me, why would you ever buy a home? Because it doesn't produce any income. And I thought, wow, what a great response out of playing the game, because again, he wants to get a bit of yield off his asset, and I thought that was the time where I thought, wow, these really do provide an impact, create fun, but allow you to ask better questions. And I think it's just transferring those games just into everyday life and finding opportunities to be able to do that. That's paramount. And I agree too with the chess in regards to strategic thinking. That's been a real game changer in the way Charlie, like he thinks about 5 to 6 moves ahead of me. Like it's ridiculous because the kid's mind's so flexible and able to take it on board much more aggressively than even I can. So it's just wonderful to see these kids get the concept of games, but then take it to levels that you're probably stuck at when you played when you were 18. You sort of haven't evolved, and they just take it to a whole different level again. So, but the Cashflow 101, I'm very interested to get my hands on because I think that's the next step out of Monopoly for Charlie personally. So, yeah.
But just for everyone playing at home, it's been rebranded as just Cashflow now, formerly Cashflow 101. So
Okay, there you go.
Just found the new website for that. I'm sure it's still called Cashflow 101 everywhere, but Rich Dad's official website has it coined as just Cashflow. But wait, I've never heard of it or seen it before. Available for around $150 to $200 on Amazon at the moment or eBay.
Yeah.
But it's so clever, right? Like
Very.
I think back to childhood, primary school, high school, and go, where are you meant to get those lessons from, right? And if your parents aren't necessarily, let's say they weren't financially savvy and stacking the asset column as Rich Dad Poor Dad talks about and going through all those lessons. We learn from when we go to school to learn. But most of the time, this isn't built into the curriculum at school. They're busy teaching Pythagoras theorem, which helps me be a great pool player. Won a few games of pool yesterday and was lipping off about Pythagorean. But again, my asset column could be stacked a little bit better if I'd been better with my money growing up rather than, I think there's something on the website that talks about, it's not about how much income you earn, it's about how much you keep of that money. So if you're busy spending to travel and keep up with the Joneses and the latest car and the latest clothes, when you could have been stacking the asset column and building, passive income generating assets so you could have all of it down the track very interesting. I like it, Nick.
I've never played the game, so I just will say that. But I've done a bit of research, and I'll read a few things out. But to Marty's point, I think did you just look it up? It was still $200, Jace. I had a quick look this morning.
Yeah, just looked it up. Yeah, there's
that is expensive for a board game.
Websites range between $150 and $200.
But I guess how much would you pay to educate your kids? I guess it's if you compare it to some other costs.
Could be one of the best investments you make.
Yeah, and I guess Kiyosaki has always preached indirectly that the system is the system and you need to know how to work the system. And on the podcast with Burris this morning, he was very much talking about that. It was a bit of doomsday. So for anyone that's a bit of a warning for anyone that's going to listen to it, Kiyosaki is quite opinionated on a few things, but it was good to get a different perspective. But so just a couple of things on the board game. So the board game has 2 tracks: a rat race, small circle where you can only roll 1 dice to advance, and a fast track where you roll 2 dice to advance. Marty, which track would you be on?
Oh, Australian the fast track. I already know where this is heading.
In the rat race, you get paid for passing your paycheck space and then draw from one of 4 decks of cards depending on which space you've landed. Some of the deals are good, others are bad. Your main problem in the rat race is shortage of cash. In the fast track, your main problem is an excess of cash and finding investments to sink it into before you lose it to lawsuits, divorce, or tax audits. So this is real life stuff, right? In the heart of the game, though, player sheets where players learn how to fill out financial statements. Players choose from a variety of starting careers, such as truck driver, mechanic, lawyer, airline pilot, etc., and fill out their financial sheets appropriately. As they land cards and invest in different deals, they dutifully log each change to their financial sheets as well. After a few games, most people end up using the same financial sheets to fill out their own personal information. With each card event, the drawing player may buy at that price, but all players may sell at that price. Also, players make co-investments with the drawing player or even buy the deal from him or her if they agree. So I'm reading that and it sounds to me it's all about, okay, you're choosing whether you want to be someone who earns money and just pays your way or someone who creates money and invests. And then you're also dealing with life problems, so things that could get thrown at you in life, such as divorce and tax. But then you're also looking at different deals and what are good deals and what are bad deals, and also dealing with other people in the game and how to understand what a good deal or a bad deal is. Now, I look at all of that and I think, well, that is business. That is business in its absolute entirety, because you're dealing with people. You're looking at good and bad investments, whether that's your people or other investments you might make into your business, chasing a return. But I really loved the rat race versus fast track. And that's what Robert Kiyosaki talks about. Don't be in the rat race. Don't be earning money and then someone taking it all off you, whether it's through debt or tax. Be someone who's creating cash flow, because he's big on cash flow, that you can then use to continue to build assets. So, yeah, I thought what better way to teach your kids than through a board game.
Yeah, there's another board game in Australia called Life, and it's a rat race board game where you could pick a trade or you could go to uni. But if you go to uni, it takes longer to get around the board, but you get a higher income off the back end, and you've got to work out whether it in being a trade and starting in work earlier ends up being better. And along the way, you get little, what would they call them? Little pointers that you put into this car when you have kids, and that slows you down as well. So it's this track. But what I liked about it was a bit realistic in regards to various different professions, but I didn't like that there was no self-employed route. And that's why I stopped playing it. So, but it was actually an interesting game just to give perception as to choice. And it was an early entry game, but definitely need the cash flow game. I think that, just again, it's all about choice in life and setting your kids up to have the most amount of choice and letting them move towards what they really want to do in the end. But I think it's Education 101, that cash flow game, from what you're saying there, Nick.
And there must be an Australian version that's cheaper and more accessible, I would have thought. But yeah, then there's also Monopoly, I guess. And I guess Monopoly, I've obviously played a lot of Monopoly, as most of us would have, but I don't feel like that would have given me the same education that something like that cash flow game would have. It is very much just about beating the person, having more things, I guess, than the people that you're playing against. It doesn't talk about what type of job have you got and are you in the rat race or the fast track. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. Jace, you're going to teach your kids through Cashflow 101?
I should play it myself first. I reckon we should we should pull together as the numbers game, buy a numbers game owned Cashflow board game, and the three of us have a bit of a round and see who comes out on top, and maybe we can share some odds with our listeners, get some bets going, and see who comes out on top.
There's no chance I'm playing Marty Vidakovic in a Cashflow game. Hands down.
Charlie's the real threat. He's now, like I've said before on previous podcasts, like he collects rare coins and then sells them on eBay. And we have to actually run it through an adult account before we shift it to his account, just purely because it's commerce. And it's he goes, Dad, where's that $32 that should have been there 3 days ago? He's all over it. He knows his cash flow, this kid. But it's great, right? So he knows his cost. He knows what he sells for. He knows the difference. And even eBay has a fantastic calculator in regards to stripping out all the costs when you actually someone buys something, like all fees and everything. So it really gives you a net figure at the end of that sale. Very, very good education piece for kids in regards to if they're doing anything on commerce on that site.
Just the basics. And it actually, there's another thing that Mark Burris said around his dealings with Kerry Packer. And this was in the same podcast, and he said he had to present a set of financial statements to Kerry Packer every month. When they were in Wizard, they were 50-50. And when he first come in, he obviously presented all the things you would think you would present through a profit and loss, EBIT and all these things, EBITDA, multiples and whatnot. And Kerry said to him, son, I don't give a shit about multiples and EBIT. I want to know 4 things. Who do we owe money to? who owes us money and how long's it been owing for? How much cash have we got in the bank? And what was the other one? I think it was just simply how much money have we made this month? That was it, the 4 things. And I think about running a business now, and that's it. Who do we owe? Who owes us money? How much money have we got in the bank? And have we made any money this month? And it's funny to think that someone at that level, Kerry Packer's level, obviously an old school business person, but they were the only 4 things that mattered. Not all the other numbers that can, and Jace, a lot of the numbers that you'd see thrown around. At all, you come back to those 4 things. They're probably the 4 most important things that determine whether or not you're a success.
There's a great software called Cashflow Story, and it's the basics in regards to running a business effectively. Exactly what you said there, Nick, is covered in that. And they say how often they're saying, people look at the profit and loss, and that's where they think their business is at. But they don't, like they say, what is it? Revenue is vanity. Profit is great, but cash is king. And it's, but they're saying, but what is your cash position? At the end of the day, if you've got money owing and you've got debts and everything, what is the actual cash you're bringing into the business? And this software does an analysis on that, as well as off the balance sheet. And are you reducing debt? Is your cash working towards strengthening your business valuation? But it's much more simpler than things I've seen out there in the market, even from an accountancy practice, as we all look at. But its relevance is really critical to key components on business. So I like that you mentioned that, because so many business owners get overwhelmed with jargon, I guess. It happens in the finance world as well. But what are those key attributes that mean your business is making money and that you're investing that money successfully?
Yeah. Ultimately, I mean, the Cashflow board game and the things we've talked about there, it comes down to education, like an empowering yourself and your knowledge for success. So even Marty talking about Cashflow Story, I sat there getting a little bit like the amount of times I'll show a business owner their P&L and tell them how much profit they've made, and they'll go, but I don't have any money. Like,
that's right.
So it's that, what's tied up in age receivables, what's tied up in payables, what's the cash balance and where's the cash gone? How much has been drawn off the balance sheet and gone elsewhere? It's all those things. So anything that empowers financial education, all for it. So I'm really happy that you've brought Cashflow 101, or now Cashflow, to the table, Nick. So anyone out there, if you do end up picking up a copy of Cashflow, please let us know what you think and how you go. Just going to throw in there as well that I just had a quick little research on the side of some interesting board games that encourage education and valuable life lessons. Not sure this one should be in the list, but there's a board game called Pandemic where you get to be a player that you work together as a team. It requires teamwork and problem-solving skills, and you save humanity from pandemics around the globe. Apparently, it is thrilling and strategic and suitable for players of all ages. So if Cashflow 101 doesn't sound like your game, maybe pick up Pandemic, and also follow us and reach out to us at The Numbers Game on Instagram or email or LinkedIn, and let us know your favorite board game, where you play it, who you play it with, and if you're the absolute boss at it. So thank you for listening, and until next time,
keep rolling the dice. Game over.